So I tried to find a newspaper to use as a prop for the beginning of this video, but I couldn't find one. Mostly because we don't get the newspaper at this house, and I forgot to ask my mom to bring one home from work, since they get newspapers at her work. But I was going to have a newspaper. I don't. Oh well. Certainly wouldn't have been a current headline. So, moving on to the next cover page series, which is From the Decks of the World. So this is the first cover page series after the time skip. And this is essentially, the short summary real quick is that it essentially just is a catch-up thing to show kind of what's kind of happened to the people that the Straw Hat have met or back home for them, what's happened during the 2-year time skip. Or just other people that the Straw Hat have met, not necessarily their friends, because we get caught up on some of their enemies and whatnot in this as well, or adversaries, to a degree in this. So, get through that. So, this cover page series ran from chapter 613 through 668, and it had 48 installments, and it's pretty much just like a real rapid fire way of getting you caught up on what else is going on in the world. So, not too bad. See how much I talk on each one of these. There is still whatever hell spawn of pollen is outside right now is still just destroying my sinuses. So, sneezing, coughing, itchy, watery eyes, all of that crap is what I am still dealing with right now, even with sinus medication. I love Nebraska. Sometimes I hate living here in regards to pollen. So, I apologize for any of that in this video. So, first page. Number 1. News coup traveling the ocean. So this is essentially just like we see kind of the cover page or the article about the Straw Hats reuniting at Sabaody. And it kind of gives like a bit of a recap on like their adventures and whatnot. We see the news coups flying, and it gives like a recap on the adventures that the Straw Hats have been on. And we get like a little reminder of like Luffy and the other 8 members of the crew, seeing up through that point, everyone up through Brook, gives you a little reminder of their bounties, all this stuff. Generally takes place after Sabaody, because this is kind of during Sabaody is what confirms that Brook is a member of the Straw Hat Pirates, because before that people didn't know that he was a member of the Straw Hat Pirates because they hadn't quite been able to confirm that, and then he'd gone on to be a rock star. So, just kind of, lists the, explains that the Straw Hats are returning at full strength. Just like a big kind of catch-all news article from Morgan's. Next up, number 2, Fuchsia Village. So this is, of course, Luffy's hometown. We see, of course, Makino. There's the first cough. We, of course, see Mayor Whoopslap, and the rest of the town is celebrating. Whoopslap is annoyed. And, of course, we see Makino cradling a baby. Now, this is, of course, when we find out that this is... Later on, we get a confirmation that this is Makino's baby. And although the name of the child has not been revealed yet, however many years later since this cover page came out, and we do not know the name of the father of this child. Lots of theories is that, it's Shanks. Shanks is the father of Makino's child, because so many people ship Shanks and Makino. Join the club. I believe there was an SBS question asked about the kid, about the son, and that it was like, yes, the baby's father is that person, but like doesn't confirm who the father is. There's theories that the joke is that it's Whoopslap is the dad. No. Probably Shanks. We may never fully find out until after the story's finished. Although, side note here, I have another video that I really want to do about like hair color in the One Piece world, and if this stays true to this hair color theory that I have for at least for Shanks, because Shanks and Shamrock have their mother's hair, have Magnolia's hair, we know her name now, have Magnolia's, that fiery red hair instead of Garling's blonde banana hair. And it would be very funny if it's just the Figurland genetics that their hair color gets overridden by the mother's hair color because the baby, if the baby is Shakes' baby, has Makino's hair color, has the green hair color that they always give Makino. Um, and that would just be funny because it's just like, Garlic, my babies don't have my blonde hair. They have the red hair. Oh, well. And then Shanks, oh, good, the baby doesn't have my red hair. That would be funny. So we have that. You see, of course, the town is celebrating in the background because they're very happy for Luffy and everything. Number 3, we have Mount Corbo, and we of course have the bandits in the background. We have Dadan and her bandit family in the background, and they're of course reading the newspaper, and they're all really happy about Luffy, and we all see them having the straw hats on their heads, and they're all just very happy about them. So we get that, and of course they do miss Ace, obviously. There is the scene I think it's in the manga and in the anime, where like the Dawn goes to, after they find out that Luffy is alive, they go to the tree house, the old tree house where the boys used to play, and she's like holding up the newspaper at the tree house, going like, "It's okay, Ace, you saved Luffy, he's alive." So this is like, now they're 2 years later, they're happy, they're seeing that Luffy is of course still alive, they're very celebratory and everything like that. So we get that. Then we get to Shell's Town, and we get Rika, and this is a cover page that I've talked about before when I talked about Rika in her video. And of course we have, we see Rika, Ripper, and Rokaku, whatever, that were the other Marines at the Shell's Town base when Morgan was there. And Captain Morgan was there. And of course, Rika is now, of course, a waitress at the Shell's Town Marine base. And they have Luffy's wanted poster up there. And we, of course, she's grown up. She's very cute. And of course, this is her first appearance since the Diary of Koby Meppo. And of course, we see the others in the background as well. So, we're seeing that. So just a nice little thing there. Not really too much happens in this one. Then we cut to Shimosuke Village, and we have Report to Kuina. So there's always the theory, and this theory has been around for a very long time, that Kuina is actually Tashigi and that she has memory issues. That is very much not true. Kuina is not Tashigi, and this is like kind of confirming that Kuina is dead, or like the full confirmation, because we see her grave here. And of course, we have Koshiro here, and he has, he's visiting Kuina's grave. He's got like the training sword there with him, and he's got a bouquet of flowers, and he's got the current newspaper, so she can kind of see how Zoro's doing, about his return, and how all of that is going for him. So we're getting, a nice setup there. We see him very proud. Shimosuke Village, we get a bit of catch up every now and then when we see, next we get Orange Town. So this is one, which I have talked about before, because I talked about Boodle, when I did my, Rulers and Leaders series. So he's the mayor of Orange Town. So we get to see, Orange Town here, the grand opening of the great pet food shop, Chow Chow. So this is really adorable. I love this. So, Chow Chow and Mayor Boodle were, of course, introduced way back in the beginning in Orange Town. And we're seeing them here. Orange Town has been rebuilt after Buggy has destroyed it, after Buggy caused so much damage to the town and traumatized the citizens. But they have rebuilt the town using the money that Luffy left with them. And we had this, there's this new fountain built in the middle of town that has like Chow Chow sitting there with the hat, because of course it's a reference to Hachiko, because Chow Chow is a reference to Hachiko. And he's got, he's got the straw hat on his head, and he's got a newspaper in his mouth, and, the town looks much better, much more vibrant. And in the background, we see the big Chow Chow's pet food shop, and on top of it is a straw hat, because of course the citizens of Orange Town, specifically Boodle and Chow Chow, are very much aware of the fact that Luffy and the others are not bad pirates, and that they help them. They save their town from Buggy. And that was very well highlighted in the live action as well. I very much liked how they handled Orange Town in the live action. Would have liked a tad more reference to Chow Chow, but I like how they handled the live action. Handled Orange Town in the live action with Boodle and everything there. And of course, the Straw Hats still helping them and proving that they were good pirates to them. So we have that here. This kind of does get a little bit more referenced when we see Boodle much more recently. We saw him and his granddaughter during Vegapunk's broadcast. We kind of get a little bit more reference to, like, because they're sitting around the fountain and Chow Chow's there. So we see that here. And then we have the Island of Rare Animals, and it has a new inhabitant, the Barrel Woman, Sarfunkel. So again, I've talked about this cover page before, and it's a change of pace at the Island of Rare Animals with its new inhabitant, the Barrel Woman, Sarfunkel. So we see that this woman who is stuck in a barrel, the same way that Gaimon is stuck in a treasure chest, has somehow washed up on the island, and her and Gaimon essentially just fall in love. And it's Gaimon and Starfunkel is the spoonerism of Simon and Garfunkel, which I have to reference anytime that comes up because my dad loves Simon and Garfunkel. So we have that here, and of course I talked about this when I talked about Gaimon in this series much earlier. Then we get to Syrup Village, and first we see the Veggie Pirates, the Usopp Pirates. And they have grown up a little bit. I don't remember if we ever fully get ages on them, but they're around the same age as Rika. So at this point in time, if anything, the oldest they would be is like preteens. So at the oldest they'd be like 11 or 12. But I don't remember if we ever get full confirmation on how old they are. But they've grown up a little bit. They still each, two of them are still wearing, the Usopp Jolly Roger and stuff like that from the Usopp Pirates. And they're probably still causing chaos in town every now and then. But they're growing up, which is nice. Then of course we get Syrup Village Part 2, medical student Kaya. So we of course are seeing that Kaya is very diligently studying to be a doctor. She has very much taken up that role very seriously. And of course, we also see, because of course she is the pretty, rich, nice girl in town, we of course see that she has many suitors have shown up, and Mary is just fed up with all the potential suitors, and he is just ready to kick them all out of the house, because Miss Kaya wants to study and she has no interest in any of you. She likes Usopp. Get that through your thick heads. And I think on the stack of books next to Kaya, we see like a little newspaper cutout, and I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be like Usopp in the newspaper. The little picture of Usopp from it, because of course Kaya and the boys definitely recognized Usopp as Sniper King. When that bounty came out, they recognized him right away. And so they of course know about that. So we have that fun bit here. Then we get to Kokoyashi Village, Brothers Boat, Yasuku and Johnny. Yasuku and Johnny. So this is the most recent version we have seen of Johnny and Yosuku. And they have gone from, I guess, being bounty hunters to becoming fishermen. And they still remain near Kokoyashi Village. They may actually live in Kokoyashi Village. And now they work as fishermen. The Bounty Maru. So this is the name of their fishing vessel. And I can never remember which one is which, but one of them got buff. They probably both got buff and kind of hyped up their skills a bit more. I don't know how useful they would be if they showed back up again in fighting, but they're there. Then we get to all the Baratier stuff. So first we have Baratier head office under renovation. So Zeph is shown here reading the newspaper, and we of course see that the Baratier is actually undergoing major renovations. It's expanded. It's gotten even bigger. By the way, I love the design that they had for the Baratier in the live action. They did such a great job for it in the live action. I've probably said that before, but I'll say it again. because it's true. They did a great job on the Baratie and the live action. Great set. So Zeph is, of course, very proud of Sanji and everything, and of course they're building everything up here. New renovations on it. Next one, Baratie, coupled dessert ship, Sister Anko. So this is, we see Patty here, and he is, of course, they have added some new additions onto the Baratie, and this one is a little underwater dessert submarine, the Sister Anko, where people can go and eat underwater. Cute little thing here. It's based off of an anglerfish. Just a nice thing here. And then, of course, we see Baratie coupled teppanyaki ship. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this. Nasagaria. I apologize. And we see Carne here, and he is, of course, showing off the new ship that they have that is based on Sanji's original Wanted poster with the horrible drawing of him. Which is just funny because, of course, they will take any second that they can in order to try to just, kind of, dunk on Sanji. Because why not? They love him, but they will dunk on him. So we get this, which is just fun. And then we get back to Kokoyashi Village, and we, of course, see Genzo, Nojiko, the doctor, and the young boy, who I cannot remember his name. And, it's supposed to be implied that, like, Kokoyashi Village is kind of thriving at this point in time. We see them on the hill next to Bellemer's now stone grave memorial. Instead of it being the wooden cross one that it had been for so long, they have upgraded it. They've been able to give Nojiko, or give Bellemer, the type of, gravestone that she deserves. And we see that, that all of them are visiting the gravestone, and they brought flowers. And Genzo is freaking out because he's reading in the newspaper, of course, about Nami. And we, of course, Genzo has the weird thing where he's just like, why do they keep doing sexualized pictures of Nami? And then he makes big prints of them, which is just funny. We, of course, see Nojiko and the young boy, I can never remember his name. And he, they have, the Bellemer's tangerines, of course, for the Monkins, for the Tangerine Grove. And we see that. And of course, we see the doctor in the background is kind of getting drunk, I guess. But they're just, they're happy for Nami and everything. And Kokoyashi Village is just kind of flourishing. Then we get to Lode Town, and we have Ippon Matsu, who, for some reason, because he's Ippon Matsu, I guess. By the way, live action did a great job with Ippon Matsu. He was great. And the scene with Zoro in the arms shop was just great for how they did that. So we have Ippon Matsu here, and he shows his wife that he has cleaned up the bathroom, and in doing so, he has also hung a giant laminated picture of Zoro in the bathroom, and he's like, hey, look what I did. Okay, dude, you're just weird. I don't know what to say about this. The bathroom's clean. His wife probably gets so annoyed at him. That's just funny. I don't know why. It's just funny. Then we get to the Twin Peaks, or Twin Capes. And this has been a page that has had people, just because of the digitally colored manga, has had people for so many years been like, oh my god, blah 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 blah, visited Crocus at the Twin Capes. So at the Twin Capes, we see Crocus and Laboon, and Laboon, of course, still has the painting of the Straw Hat Jolly Roger that Luffy gave him. Love how they handled the Luffy-Laboon interaction and stuff like that in the live action. I'm just going to say that a bunch of times when it comes to this stuff. I love how they handled that, and bringing in Pink Sake and Luffy singing that for Laboon to help calm him down and everything. And all of that much better than Luffy beating the heck out of Laboon. I never really cared for that part. We have Crocus and Laboon. And then we have the figure with the Casa hat, the long, light colorish hair, and the striped kimono cape type thing. For so long, pretty much just because of the way that it's colored in the digitally colored manga with like blonde hair and yellow, everybody just assumed that this was Shiki. That, old rivals, acquaintances type stuff, him and Crocus, blah, 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 blah. Let bygones be bygones. It's been over 20 years since Roger died. Stopping off, having a drink with an old acquaintance. We did not find out until everything that's going on in Elbaf that, no, this was not Shiki. This was Scopper Gibbon. On one of his whatever random loops around the world, one of his random travels. Meeting up with Crocus, stopping off the Twin Capes to see Crocus and Laboon, catching up on some stuff, and then eventually he made his way back to Elbaf with his hot giant wife and his son. And then we have everything that happens with Scopper on Elbaf, which is currently playing out in the anime. So, fun. Took us a long time to get that, but it's Scopper, not Shiki. Fine. Then we get to Whiskey Peak. So this is just one of the ones that I really like. We have Mr. Nine and Miss Monday. On Whiskey Peak, they survived the encounter with Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, and they have since, they are still bounty hunters at Whiskey Peak, but they got married and they have a child. They have a little baby. And again, I'm going to touch on the live action here because I don't do that much where I talk about the live action, but I'm going to touch on it here. I think they did a really good job with Mr. Nine in the live action, and Miss Monday did a good job with how they showed her. I really like them in the live action. I think they did a really good job with them. And there's also like the cute set photo of like the the actor and the actress together. Because of course they end up getting married post time skip at some point in time. And they of course, and I do like the live action. They did a very good job with them in the live action. That they gave Mr. Nine some really good lines and him having some really good back and forth with Zoro, which was just funny, taunting him and everything else like that. And they still had a really good fight with him and Zoro. And then of course they have the moment where he's being confronted by Mr. Five and Miss Valentine, and they're like, your little partner, Miss Wednesday, was a traitor. And he has a great moment where he just like stares them down, is well aware of the fact that they could beat his ass, and they probably do in the live action. Where he's staring him down, and he's like, traitor or not, she's still my partner. Wonderful. I love that. Because we didn't really get the moment in the live action where Mr. Nine and Miss Monday find out that Vivi and Igaram are traitors, that they are, Igaram and Vivi, Princess Vivi and everything. We don't have that moment where they find out about that the same way that we do in the manga and in the anime. And, I love the fact, I've always loved the fact that Mr. Nine and Miss Monday were like, they don't even really hesitate. They're like, well, you guys are our partners, and you guys have earned our trust more than these guys have, more than the organization as a whole has. So, no, we are going to protect you. And, like, Mr. Nine and Miss Monday try to buy time for, Vivi and Igaram and everything, and they try to help them. And I love how they do that in the manga and in the anime. And then in the live action, Miss Monday gets kind of taken out of the picture a little bit sooner by Zoro in the fight. And then of course, Mr. Nine, does have that moment where he, is like, she's my partner, so screw you, to Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. So we have that. So we still have that set up there. But we get here in the cover page that they are happily married and they have the little baby, and we do see them later on during Vegapunk's message where we see these guys um, where they're listening at Whiskey Peak. So we have that. Then, of course, we get to the Island of Giants, Little Garden, where we still have Dory and Broggy, and there, of course, they have gone down from using their weapons to using fisticuffs, because, of course, their weapons got destroyed when they destroyed the giant goldfish. Again, I think they did a pretty good job with Dory and Broggy in the live action. I liked how they handled a lot of that. And such, and we see them still, fighting here and everything, so, fun bit. So given what we know now, at some point in time between this and Elbaf, Oimo and Kashi have managed to get their way to Little Garden and have convinced their captains that it's like, okay, captains, we know you want to finish your duel, and that's fine. But is it really a good thing for you guys to still be fighting with just your fists? Wouldn't it be better to have, your brand new weapons, brand new sword and axe for you guys to be able to use? So why don't we take you back to Elbaf? You can see everybody, say hi, all that stuff. We can get you new weapons, and then we can bring you back here. So we'll see how all of that pans out in the end, whether or not Dory and Broggy return to the island. But at the moment, they're not on the island anymore, but for the cover page series for this, they are. Then, of course, we cut into a certain corporation chairman recognized by the world nobles, the evil Black Drum Kingdom is created. So we have Wapol, Kinderella, and the dog, who I don't remember the name of the dog. And this, of course, Wapol, because, he's built up his corporation, Wapol Corps, or whatever it's called, with the Wapol medal and everything, and the toys and all that stuff. And he, it has now made himself the king of the evil Black Drum Kingdom. Because reasons. Why the heck not? So, Wapol. I've talked about him too many times on this for me to care about. Then we cut to Drum Island, and of course we have the Sakura Kingdom Peace Corps. So we have Dalton, and we see one of the Loppins. We know that the Loppins end up becoming allies of Dalton and Kureha and the citizens of Drum Island of the Sakura Kingdom. The Loppins become allies of them. I generally enjoyed the Drum Island arc in the live action. Generally the casting I think was pretty good. The guy who they had played Dalton did a good job, and I think Katie Seagal did a great job as Kureha. They did great with Chopper and everything. I understand some of the stuff that had to get moved around, but I enjoyed how they kind of handled a lot of it. I get that they had to kind of do the whole Mishimagash army thing with Wapol's men to have more of a climactic battle, but I'm like, sure, whatever. So we have that. But here, of course, we know that the Loppins become allies of them, and they are part of the peacekeeping troops and everything else like that, alongside Dalton and the other soldiers. And of course, Dalton is, of course, the king of the Sakura Kingdom. And then, of course, we have the Drum Island Medical Center, Ishii 100. So, of course, Kureha has very much expanded. The Ishii 20 is now to Ishii 100. So these are just amazing doctors that she has trained, and they have opened a medical center in the old Drum Castle, kind of and we still have we see several flags here. We see the flags that are the Jolly Roger with the cherry blossoms, and then we have another flag that is the X mark from Chopper's hat, and it has Hiraluk's hat in the middle. Hi, can I help you with something? Hi. Chip is back. You're fine. I love you. You're a good dog. So, Kureha has very much, improved more of the medical training here. We have the symbols for Chopper and Hiraluk, of course, and she's got that symbol on her shirt. to show, that they are very much continuing what, like, Hero Luck had started. I think the guy that had played Hero Luck in the live action did a great job. Now we're getting into Alabasta. So we have several ones here for Alabasta. So we have the Royal Minister of the Environment, Koza. So I've talked about this one before because I've talked about Koza before. Koza at this point in time is now the Royal Minister of the Environment for Alabasta, and we see him and Toto and the young boy, who I cannot remember his name, along with several of the other members who had been members of Koza's little revolutionary army, and they're all like talking as they're reading the newspaper, and they are in Yuba, that is now this like thriving town. And of course we know that, like, because of the Garatsu cover page series, we know that Koza and his dad, that Koza and Toto have, the connection to the hot springs and everything else like that. So that's definitely helping, build up some, probably some tourism and stuff like that in Yuba. So that's good there. Then we, of course, have Alabasta Kingdom new clothes for this year's Reverie. So we have Chaka, Pell, and Igaram, along with Terracotta. And I think the other maid is just Mady, who is just one of Vivi's one of the other maids. All here, and Chaka and Pell are getting fitted for the new clothing that they are going to need to wear to this year's Reverie. We also see one of the Kung Fu Dugongs is just photobombing it, and also Chaka has jackal-themed underwear, which is just kind of funny. And of course, we see Igaram in the background holding up the newspaper and like pointing at, the information about the Straw Hats, and of course, the people who are, in Alabasta generally are aware of the fact that the Straw Hats are good people. The information essentially got out that the Straw Hats had helped save Alabasta, that they helped save Vivi and all of that stuff. And it's kind of like an open secret in Alabasta. And of course, pretty much everybody in this room knows that the Straw Hats are good, and all of that stuff. I do like how they handled Igaram in the live action. I will say that now. And I'm pretty sure I don't think he's gonna be coming back, unfortunately. But I think they did a really good job with like how they handled him in the live action, so that was great there. Knowing stuff in regards to how they've been handling death a bit more seriously in the live action, which is fair, I don't think Pell is going to be surviving the way that he did in the manga and in the anime. I don't think Pell is going to be surviving the Alabasta arc. To show that human cost of what happened, so I'm not going to be surprised by that. The live action is being a bit more serious, a little more heavy-handed when it comes to death. I can't necessarily blame them, but, what we get here. So they're all getting ready for the Reverie. And then, of course, we cut outside while they're wandering around, and we see Princess Vivi is now 18 years old. She's 16 during the events of Alabasta, and she, of course, is roaming about the streets of Alabarna and everything like that, seeing, going to the market and seeing her people and everything like that. And she has Karu and Matsuge, so Eyelashes the camel, are there, keeping an eye on her. So we have like that fun bit there. By the way, Vivi does have a little side story in the One Piece heroine novel, and I will eventually get to it because it's an adorable little one about like a little boy who writes her essentially a love letter. So we have like a nice little thing there. But I'll get to that eventually. I still have to do the Robin one and and all of that. So, but eventually I'll get to it. So we have Vivi wandering around here in the market and everything like that. And then, of course, we have her returning home, and she is visiting her father, who is unfortunately in a sick bed. Cobra is not at the best at the moment, but he is still very cheerful and everything. To be fair, he got pretty beat up by Crocodile and everything during the events of Alabasta, and so him having medical issues is not surprising. It's not surprising at all. All of that. So, she's visiting her father and talking with him and everything else like that. And he's like, pointing out the information in the newspaper. And of course, Vivi's happy about that because it's about her friends. Still am so just waiting for Vivi to be reunited with the Straw Hats. Don't know when that's going to happen. Really want it to happen soon. Don't know when it'll happen. I still want the first Straw Hat that she interacts with to be Robin. Just because of what happened in Alabasta and everything like that. I still want that to be the case. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. But of course, we see that. Now we're cutting into the Sariyama Alliance. And we, of course, have, Nola. We have a Cricket here. And we have Mashira and Shoujo are here. And they're all just really happy. They're out searching for the Island of Dreams, Nakaroa. As they're all, out searching and everything else like that. And we got them and their crews and everything out having fun. So that's fun for them. Then, of course, we get to Jaya, and we have the South Bird and the North Bird. Let's see if I have my directions correct here. North Bird, South Bird, since that was north for me. And now we, of course, have the Western Bird and the Eastern Bird. They're their babies. So we have that. Just, little Jaya bird babies. Then we cut up to Skypiea, and we're going to get a couple of things here in Skypiea. So we have Wagamu Land, or Rubber Band Land, essentially. Admission ticket saleswoman Amazon. So we, of course, have the elderly lady that's, from Skypiea, and of course they have, we're seeing in the background the entrance to this area, because, of course, as I went over in my Conus video, and the kind of Skypiea, where are they now type stuff, we have, of course, that they are all now living, they have gone from, they don't live on Angel Island anymore, that got destroyed. They have now all moved on to the area that was Shandia, and then became Godland and Skypiea, and now they all live there, where there is much more bounty and much more room for them to all live, for the Shandians and the Skypieans to all live here. In peace. And they, of course, built up this essentially rubber band land with Usopp as the mascot, with the him and the hero statue and everything. And the shields kind of look like they've got the sun pattern on them, so we'll see how that kind of pans out later. And of course, she's responsible for selling tickets, and of course they have the little rubber band land park, which is just cute, because dedicated to Usopp. And then of course we see next one is Skypiea, the Woogamant Rubber Band Land's famous Nola Bungie and Isa the Cloud Ball Girl. So we have Nola here, who's just very happy because she gets to be around friends again, and we see a bunch of the little Shandian and Skypiean kids all running around and playing together. And of course, Isa has grown up a little bit more. Again, she's preteen range or teenager range, and she's selling essentially balloons, cloud balls, to the little kids and everything. And the kids are using, Nola's, bungee whisker things, as little bungee rides. So that's a fun bit there. And of course, Nola's just happy. And then we have Skypiea, Locky or Rocky, and Conus, Pumpkin Cafe famed specialty pumpkin noodles. So we have Rocky and Conus, who are now just really good friends at this point in time. And they run this cafe where they, of course, have the pumpkin noodles, because, of course, pumpkins are big in Skypiea. And we have Poggia and McKinley are here, and they are both just, chowing down on the noodles and everything. And, of course, Poggia is visiting Conus, visiting his daughter. So we have that nice bit there. And then, of course, we have Skypiea God's Guards. So we have Wiper, Kamakiri, Bram, and Genbo. They have now, and this was kind of, wasn't 100% confirmed in the Skypiea where are they now, because they were still in the rebuilding phases, but this just fully confirms they have very much rebuilt the area where God lives, where Gonfall lives. Or at the very least, they've rebuilt it a bunch. I don't know if this is also just residence for other people to live here, probably, that work for God. I'm assuming some of the God is now under much better management than Enel. Um, but we have the God's guards here. We have all of them here, and they are the ones now in charge of protecting Gonfall and keeping him safe, and also just helping protect Skypiea in general. So we have that here. They have taken up the position that we're Eneru's priests. Um, and all of that. Hopefully they've all gotten a lot stronger. I don't know. I don't know how much more we're going to see of Skypiea at any point in time in the future. I would like to see more of them, but I don't know if that's going to happen. And then we, of course, cut to the last bit for Skypiea. We have God is pleased with this year's blessings as well. So we have Gonfall, and then Perry, the bird, the horse bird, and the Shandian chief, who we still do not know his name. He is one of the few characters that we do not actually know his name. He's just the Shandian chief. And they have become very good friends, and they are currently celebrating the harvest of this year's pumpkins, which are just huge because, of course, we saw that Gonfall liked to grow pumpkins because, of course, pumpkins were brought to Shandia by Noland, and then when Shandia got shot up into the sky, this part of Jaya got shot up into the sky and ended up in Godland, and then they found pumpkins on Godland, and then they started to grow those there. And then, of course, that spread into the Skypiean culture, and then now they just grow pumpkins, which is just fun. And they're weird, spicy pumpkins. So I don't know exactly what's going on there. But Gonfall and the chief are now really good friends, and like Gonfall's just sitting there in like a t-shirt and shorts, which is just funny. And of course, we see the golden bell in the background. The golden belfry is there and intact, and is like under the protection of that is an item that is very sacred to the Shandians, to the Shandorans, very sacred to them, and has become sacred to the Skypieans because of everything that happened with Enel and Luffy and everything. So we have that there. Then we get to Long Ring Longland, and we have Tangent and has grandchildren. So technically in the anime, there is the one grandchild that we see who has the giant mole that shows up, and that's how they get Tangent to go and get reunited with his family in the anime because of how they have the filler set up with Foxy and all of that stuff. In this, we just get the full confirmation that yes, Tangent has grandkids. We see him and Shelly, the horse, his horse, and he's got his two little grandkids that he is just so happy to be around, and we see him just like eating a dumpling or whatever, and he's just so happy, and he's been reunited with his family, has probably been reunited with them for a little while at this point in time, since he was able to walk across and catch up with them thanks to Kuzan freezing, doing his ice age and freezing the area around the island so Tangent could get caught up to his family after being separated from them for so long. Then we have Shift Station, and we're entering the Water 7 stuff. So we have popular Sunday station master Chimney is here. So we have Chimney, a little bit more grown up, and she still has Genbei, who is of course her little rabbit that thinks it's a dog, if I remember correctly. And she is kind of the station master on Sundays, so she's just having a fun time there. Going down that. And then we have, then we get to see Kokoro. So we have Ice Fish Mermaid Kokoro-san's Splendid Holiday. And so we have her, and then we see Yokozuna in the background as well, who is no longer attacking the trains. And they are just swimming and enjoying their vacation while they're reading about the Straw Hats' whereabouts and everything, and reading about Frankie and all of that. Very happy about that. And she also just has like a bottle of whatever the heck, alcohol she's reading. Also, I don't know how useful it is to read a newspaper under the water. That seems like it's going to make the ink bleed and very hard to read. But sure, you read whatever you want there. Then we cut back to Water 7, or we cut into Water 7, where we have the bartenders, Mozo and Kiwi. So Mozo and Kiwi at some point took over the bar. I believe this is supposed to be the same bar that Blueno had been the bartender at. They somehow took over. They took over that bar, and they meet at their bar. And now they are talking with some of their customers. And the customers are, of course, Lola and the Risky Brothers of the Rolling Pirates. So, because at the end of Thriller Bark, Frankie kind of fixed up one of the old ships so that way Lola and her crew, along with some of the others, could escape the island so that way they could, finally leave after being trapped there for so long with their shadows being taken. And they, head off, and he kind of sends them off in the direction of Water 7. And like, if you go there, blah, 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 they, like, Nami gave them some treasure so they could use the treasure to help, buy it, get a new ship made and everything. So they send them off that way. By the way, later on, I will be doing a video where I talk about Lola and Chiffon because I love them both. Guess which cover page series that'll be paired with. But, eventually they ended up at Water 7. So this seems to be they eventually ended up here. So maybe they ended up here at one point, and then maybe they didn't interact with Bozu and Kiwi. And then eventually they came back. Because we know at some point from this point in time, they do make their way back into the new world. And end up back in that part of the Grand Line. So we'll see what happens. But what we're seeing here is like they're talking. They're like, yeah, no, we know Frankie. Yeah, they helped us, and we know Nami and the others. Yeah, they're great. They have a skeleton on their crew now. That was weird. Yeah, I proposed to Frankie. He said no, but I wasn't surprised by it. Blah 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 blah. And so we have like that little bit here where they're all talking. Then we get to the Water 7 Gallilaw Company's genius secretary is 10 years old. So this is where we kind of get the more full introduction of Alice, who is, of course, Iceberg's candidate number 153. We saw this. I talked about this already in the cover page series for the Water 7. Where are they now? Essentially, and of course, he ended up picking Alice as his secretary, and she was 8 years old at the time. She is now 10, and she is an amazing secretary for him. And we saw her a little bit in the. During when Vegapunk's message was going out, we saw how capable she was. And of course, we see Iceberg here. And of course, we see Tyrannosaurus, the little mouse. Then we see Water 7, second sea train is finally complete. So we see Polly, who is now like the second in command of the, Water 7 of Gallilaw. And we see Tilestone and Pepe, and Lulu. And they are celebrating that the Gallilaw have finished building the Puffing Ice. Because, of course, the original train was Rocket Man, and that got destroyed. And then they had the Puffing Tom, which was the main sea train that went. And now they have finished a second sea train here. That is the Puffing Ice, of course, referencing to Iceberg. And, of course, they're all super happy about this. And then we get into, this one's just kind of funny. So then we get to the Poochie the Gourmet Town, which is one of the other islands that is connected via the sea train. There's several other islands that are connected to the sea train. And there's like Poochie, and then there's like there's like 2 or 3 others, I think, that are connected to Water 7 via the sea train. And what we have here is we have purchase, repair, and demolish all for all your ship needs. There's Zombe's company union. So Zombe, the former member of the Frankie family, along with several of the other former members of the Frankie family, have kind of built they work under the heading of they do work for Gallilaw and under Iceberg, but they kind of more do kind of their own little thing, and they are dealing with the Bemin, who is the mayor of Poochie, the gourmet town, and he's ordering 2 ships, and he wants them to be cola powered. So that's reference to Frankie, of course, doing cola powered. And then we have his daughter, Marume, which means completely exposed to view, is what her name means, and she has binoculars, and she is like looking at the cruise ship guide and everything else like that for what they're building. And she is a reference to, in the manga, originally when Frankie is running around Water 7 without his Speedo on, she is there with her butler, who is also behind her, Yananhara, which means please stop. And this is funny because when Frankie's running around, she sees him with her binoculars and she's like, oh! And like her butler is like, please don't do that. So it's, it's like she was exposed to, Frankie, and he's like, please stop. And she's just like, amazed by she's just there, and it's just funny. So it's just like this funny little running thing that like Oda asked, someone asked about these and Oda answered. So we cut to the one little bit in Thriller Bark here. So we cut to Wandering Thriller Bark found Kumishi. So we have Perona here. So Perona, of course, helped Zoro get to Sabaody, helped him get there, kind of helped help the Straw Hats escape and everything. And she has now worked her way back. She stopped off at Thriller Bark, and she, of course, found Kumishi, or at least the body of Kumishi, which somehow has not rotted away in the last 2 years. I don't know what Hogback was using to prevent that, but sure. But she found her Kumishi. So we have that. Then we cut to Sabaody Archipelago, and this one's just fun because of the prick who is the one on the cover. So we have Sabaody Archipelago, the fallen slave trader Disco. So this is great. Disco is a prick. Very prick. So Disco, who was the guy who was the head auctioneer at the Human Auction House, which we see in rubble behind him because it gets kind of destroyed by Luffy and Law and Kid when they're fighting. And of course, everything, during the culmination of like what happens in there with Rayleigh and Kami and everything else like that, the auction house kind of gets destroyed. And Disco kind of gets put out of business twofold because Dofi, because Doflamingo, who had been one of the sponsors of the auction house, is not sponsoring the auction house anymore because he has moved on to Slaves Are Out and Smiles Are In, for that reference there. So Disco is he is now vagrant, he is a drunk, he is in tatters, which is what he deserves. And he has stabbed through several of the wanted posters. We see Luffy, Laws, and Kids are here, and I think we see Zoro's as well. Stabbed through a bunch of the wanted posters of the supernovas that ruined the auction house, and he's just very angry about it. I'm like, dude, you were selling human beings. You deserve whatever punishment you are getting right now. I don't care. Then we move into Impel Down, which is kind of where we're going to be finishing up a bunch of this, is a bunch of the Impel Down stuff. So, first off, Impel Down, Warden Hannibal and Head Jailer Domino. So, given everything that happened during Impel Down with the breakout and Luffy and all of that stuff, Magellan has been demoted, and Hannibal has been was given a raise, was promoted, is now the head jailer, is now the warden, excuse me, he is now the warden, and he also got fat. And of course, Shiryu is no longer here. He went off and joined the Blackbeard Pirates, so Domino has now been made the head jailer, and apparently doesn't know what an undershirt is anymore. Then, of course, we have the Impel Down new jailer beast, Mino Chihuahua. So, of course, we saw the other jailer beasts during Impel Down, where there was Mino Tauros, Mino Koala, Mino Rhinoceros, and Mino Zebra. And, of course, we see all of them here. They are kind of the failed awakenings, or awakenings where they were not able to stay fully in control of them. And now we have Mino Chihuahua is here, who seems to be another awakened jailer beast that has been put here and is under the command of Sadie. Speaking of Sadie, we see Sadie has, of course, recently fallen in love with the newly appointed Vice Warden. So we'll get to who the new Vice Warden is in a moment. And we see Sadie and we see Saldeath. And it is it's confirmed here that Magellan has been, well, he was demoted down to the Vice Warden because of everything that happened, but they're like, he's still pretty competent, so we can't just get rid of him, so we're just going to demote him and technically have Hannibal in charge, but Magellan's still really in charge, and we're all aware of this, right? Right? Yep, okay. We'll just let Hannibal think that he's in charge. So Sadie is here, and Seldath very much had a growth spurt in the last 2 years because he looks like a child when you first meet him, and now he has very much gotten a lot taller. So he had a growth spurt. And yeah, Sadie's has a crush on Hannibal, or a crush on Magellan, which is just funny. And then we have Impel Down, the most reliable man in hell, new Vice Warden Magellan. So he's now the Vice Warden instead of the head, the whole warden, I guess. I don't know. So he's got that, and we see Sadie is just of course like, oh, and Hannibal is still like, yay, Magellan, whatever. And Magellan got some beat up during the fight with everything that happened. He has a new kind of I don't remember. His horns can be taken off. His horns are not legitimately his actual horns. They're just there as like kind of a display piece. And then I don't remember if his wings are actually his wings or if that's just more of a, hey, I got injured in the fight, so I'm going to have this new fake kind of metal wing going on for this. Then we have Impel Down, level 5.5, new Kamaland, new Queen Bon Sama. So this just confirms, as of course I've already went over, that of course Bon Clay or Bantham is not dead. That they are now the new Queen of Impel Down in New Kamaland in 5.5. So, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen. Is Bon Clay going to result in another breakout at some point in time? Is something going to happen? We don't know. We don't know yet. Then we cut to Kamabaka Kingdom. The same as ever, Okama King confirms that Straw Hat Boys set sail. So, of course, we see Emporio Ivankov here reading the newspaper about, Luffy and the others heading off. Very happy there about that. And then we have our last one for this cover page series. And we have Whitebeard and Ace's grave. And we kind of saw these at one point in time. I believe we saw these near the end of the pre-time skip where we have, Shanks makes sure that Ace and Whitebeard are given proper burials, that they are not being used as propaganda by the government. We, of course, have, Whitebeard's Macento is here, his giant polearm. Can I help you with something? I'm almost done. And, his tattered coat and the flag. And then, of course, we have Ace. Ace's hat and his sword are here. And we see that someone has left some offerings. Someone has left flowers. Someone has left a newspaper. And someone has left a bottle of sake with 3 little cups. Now, later on, this gets confirmed that this was Sabo that visited here. That Sabo, after having, of course, regained his memories, made his way here, and he was paying his respects to Ace because he hadn't been able to do that. He hadn't remembered that Ace was his brother, and then, of course, they had to find out where the grave was and everything, and he goes and he visits here. And, this gets shown in, like, kind of the episode of Sabo that we get at one point in time, where we kind of find out what Sabo was doing while Ace and Luffy were, growing up finished growing up on Fuchsia Village. So we kind of have that here. This little bit here. So that's what we have. That's the end of this one. I have quite the plethora of characters that I could pick from for who I'm going to talk about for the paired video for this. So you'll just have to, you'll find out in like a week, but you'll just have to wait and see who I pick to talk about. So that's what I have for this. I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye.